What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Welcome back to another Lorcana video. Today we are talking about the OG meme deck. If you would have mentioned it in set 4 and here we are in set 7 as a viable meta competitor, I think people would have looked at you and had a little bit of a chuckle. I think this deck has legs. I think it is very competitive. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about Blurple, Amethyst Sapphire combo. Blurple at its core takes two colors that do two things very well. The first being Amethyst that draws and has some big bodies, and the other being Sapphire that ramps you into those larger characters. Now, if you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, you'll remember that we created a video talking about creating a deck for my friend Andrew, and we landed on Sapphire Steel because he wanted to build a deck revolving around this card right here, Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock. His Sapphire Steel deck had 3 core cards that he wanted to build around: the Mufasa, Great Stone Dragon, and Whole New Worlds. We built it and honestly had a lot of fun, but recently inside of the competitive scene, a ban has come out, and that ban eliminated from competitive play Hiram, Flaversham, the Toy Maker, as well as Fortisphere, which are 2 direct nerfs to Sapphire Steel. In fact, my friend Andrew even made the joke, as he had been borrowing cards, all I have to do is just buy the cards and something's going to happen. And of course, they didn't really hit Sapphire Ruby as hard as they could have. They went after Sapphire Steel. Andrew's trying to pivot and see if he can still make Sapphire Steel work, but while he's working on that, we decided to get me started on pivoting and working on an alternative option, and that's where we landed at Blurple, because we believe that Blurple can answer the drawbacks or problems that existed with the removal of Hiram, Flaversham, as well as Fortisphere. Basically, we wanted to keep ramping into Mufasa while still having the ability to draw cards. A couple of things about this list is that first, it definitely has some weaknesses to it, and it is outside of the traditional Blurple. There's some inclusions here that are not standard inside of a lot of Blurple lists that I'm seeing, and I think that part of this is to try and spice things up a little bit, but also Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock, is a card that we are super fascinated by and wanted to keep as the cornerstone of even this Blurple deck, because the ability to not only quest for 4, but in a steel heavy meta, it becomes incredibly difficult for steel to remove Mufasa. And essentially, if we can get Mufasa to stay on the board and use his secondary ability, Everything the Light Touches, to reset our ink at the end of the turn, it is absolutely game changing. Looking at the list, we have what appears to be only 6 1-drops, but we actually have 10 because we also have 4 Popsicles, which are going to be used to remove some damage as well as activate the Bell Apprentice Inventor, but we'll talk about that in a second. We have 3 of the Chernobog Followers and 3 Diablo Obedient Ravens. Chernobog Followers is probably one of the best 1-drops in the game. On its quest, you can banish it and draw a card. As we're trying to ramp, we understand that ramping means that we're going to lower the amount of cards in our hands. We want to lean into the purple side of the deck in order to refresh their hands, and that's where 1-drops like Chernobogs and Diablo really seem to shine. Chernobogs can have some power on our hand, and it does create sort of the nuance of when is the right time to keep Chernobogs out on the board versus banish him. The other option being Diablo Obedient Raven, though, who is a 0/1, so it's easy for anything to trade in, but guaranteed draws a card when it's banished, whether it's banished by removal by a spell or a character challenging into it. Now, a key feature of the deck is on turn 2, we have 8 cards that we want to play in turn 2, and they all involve ramp. They are Tipo, Growing Sun, as well as Sail the Azurite Sea. One can be better than the other, it just depends on what we have in our hands. Quick pros and cons: we only have 11 uninkables in the deck, and when you Sail the Azurite Sea, it allows you to ink twice in 1 turn, which means that you're not only going to draw a card to replace Sail the Azurite Sea, but you get to ink another card. The drawback means that when you get to turn 2, in order to even play Sail the Azurite Sea, you have to have essentially 2 inkable cards, but that second ink is available for use. So if you have another 1-drop in your hand, being a Popsicle, Diablo, or Chernobog, you can Sail the Azurite Sea and ramp and still use that extra sort of ramp in order to find and play a second card. Tipo, when you play him, he puts a card from your hand into the inkwell face down and exerted. This does not have to be an inkable card, so if you're sitting on one of our big cards like a Hades that may not be useful for several turns, well, you can go ahead and have Tipo put Hades into the inkwell and get your ramp going accordingly. The drawback, obviously, is that this ink is not usable during your turn. When we are mulliganing or altering at the beginning of the game, we want to make sure that we have either a Tipo or a Sail in our hand. Most often, if you do not find one of those 2 cards, it is worth just shipping all 7 of your cards off, making sure that you can hit that turn 2 ramp. The games where you do not hit turn 2 ramp, I promise you, you are going to feel the pain on the other side. 3 3-drops in the game, but that accounts for 10 or a sixth of our deck, being Merlin Crab, who is super powerful at helping us sort of contest the board, because we want to be contesting the board at all times when we play Merlin Crab, and when he exits the board, we get to give a character Challenger +3, so we're going to swing for 3 more on that turn. We also have Madam M Fox, who is a bounce character to allow us to, we have a lot of powerful enter the board effects, and so Fox allows us to bounce those characters back to our hands, as well as has Rush and is a 4/3, so she can really take out a lot of major characters on the other side. Very, very powerful. And then last but not least, we have Belle, the Apprentice Inventor, who is just a powerhouse. If we can play her off of banishing a Popsicle, most often we can contest any aggro board right off the bat. So if you know you're playing against aggro, it's very worth it to try to mulligan to find your Popsicle Belle combo. It's funny looking at the curve of the deck, because we actually have the same amount of 3-cost characters as we do 4-cost characters, because 30 of our 60 cards belong in this 3 and 4-drop realm. At the 4-drop, we have Merlin Goat. If you're familiar with purple, Merlin Goat, when he enters the board, gains us a lore. This is a great way to close out the game, as well as being a 4-strength character, can really contest locations. Super, super powerful. The amount of games where Amethyst or purple decks seem to win off of getting to 16, 17 lore and then just being able to goat into a win is crazy. 2 of the biggest cards in the deck are going to be Genie Wish Fulfilled and Merlin Rabbit. A lot of people are living on one side or the other of this conversation right now inside of the meta. Lots of people are leaning towards Genie because it is an evasive meta that we find ourselves in, and he has that evasive characteristic to him. Draws you a card to replace himself when he enters the board. Very, very powerful. However, with the amount of removal that exists in the game, as well as the Muses being a constant threat from the Emerald decks, we want to make sure that sometimes Genie just gets bullied on trying to beat to the board over and over again, which is where Rabbit really shines. Also draws you a card to replace itself when you play it, and I understand that it's not evasive in a quest for 1, but when Rabbit exits the board, whether being banished or bounced back to your hand by yourself or by an opponent, it draws a card again. So we can generate massive card advantage from Rabbits just moving in and out of the board. I'm really enjoying having Rabbit in the deck, and so instead of living on one side or the other, I just kind of cut it down the middle here, and we went 3 and 3 because I do think that the balance of the 2 can be quite strong. Could be kind of swayed on this. Now, another odd inclusion here is that we have Belle Strange but Special. This is a set 1 legendary who she's probably most on the chopping block for the deck, but I do think that there are games that she just crushes things for us. When we're looking at the Belle Strange but Special, she is nothing really to write home about in terms of base stats, but her abilities are really where it shines. The first is that she allows us to ink twice during a turn. She's like Fishbone Quill on a body. So, but we don't even have to like exert it in order to use it. While she is standing tall, we can ink twice every single turn. She allows us to ramp to our cornerstone, Mufasa, ruler of Pride Rock. The other beautiful part about it is that we're not going to find Mufasa every single game. And with Belle, if we have 10 or more ink inside of our inkwell, she quests for 5. She's a threat that has to be removed. And if people are burning your removal on Belle Strange but Special, it becomes a lot harder to answer your other threats like Genies and Elsas and Hades and Mufasas. Now, another Belle that we included in the deck, and we only have one of, see a world for more, is the Belle Accomplished Mystic. She does have a shift target, so she can be played onto our 3-drop Belle Princess Inventor. She can be shifted onto Belle Strange but Special. She allows us to move up to 3 damage counters when we play from any character onto an opposing character. This means you can move damage from one character on your opponent's side of the board to another, or you can remove it from your character to another. And so we're able to just challenge the board. It's one of the cool things. There's a lot of tools inside of this deck we can utilize and lean on in the right situation to have removal. I want to take a look at this play that I had in a game today involving Belle Accomplished Mystic. We're going to spend 5 for the Elsa. We will exert the Aerial. Hades will take out the Aerial. We are going to double ink because of Belle. Go to 9. Spend 3 to shift the Belle. And then we'll move this 2 damage onto Robin Hood. We will then have this Belle take out Daisy. Then we will spend 1 for Diablo. Now another star of the deck is Elsa, 5th Spirit, who comes in as our ability to sort of exert and challenge other characters, as well as having Rush. She's just a very functional card that can be used in a lot of different places. We move on to the other big dogs of the deck are going to be Hades, Infernal Schemer. This is a super powerful card that allows us to remove a threat as often as we want. And when you pair it with a Madame Mim Fox and are able to bounce that Hades back to hand and you can play it again. Let's run through the actions really fast. We already talked about Sail the Azurite Sea that you guys saw. We have 6 songs in the deck, being Friends on the Other Side, just allows us more card draw once again. We want to ramp, we want to have that ability, but we need to make sure that we're refreshing our hand so that we're not an easy target for discard. We also have Let It Go. It's what Hades does, just instead of being on a body, it's on a song. It just gives us more threats. With Hades and Let It Go, we have 5 opportunities to just eliminate something from our opponent's side of the board without even blinking, without asking questions. Very, very powerful. In terms of items, you know about the popsicles, but I want to talk about Great Stone Dragon. It allows us to ramp. We have 42 characters inside of the deck. I almost want you to treat, when you're playing this deck, treat Great Stone Dragon as if it is uninkable, because the games where Great Stone Dragon ends up in the inkwell are games that so often we feel like we're going to lose anyways. I love the idea of Great Stone Dragon hitting the board, and it doesn't always have to be on curve. It doesn't have to be on when you have 3 ink. Playing it later on in the game and then allowing it to just be free ramp because you have some characters being traded and put in the inkwell is super, super powerful. And then another fun part is that if you have characters that you really lean on and enjoy, be sure to make those early targets for Great Stone Dragon, because when Mufasa comes to the board, you're going to get 2 cards from your inkwell back into your hand. Underrated part of playing Mufasa that a lot of people are just not paying attention to. And last but not least, let's talk about McDuck Manor, because McDuck Manors are something that it almost feels like if you're playing blue right now and you don't have McDuck Manors in your deck, like what are we even thinking about? Like, why are we not including these? This is a 9 willpower location that gives you 2 lore every single turn. There are games where an early McDuck Manor can sort of slow your opponent and allow you to claw your way into the game. And if you're able to put a Genie Wish Fulfilled alongside a McDuck Manor, you can sort of quest for free as you're moving, because they feel like they have to answer the location. I've heard people describe locations as a bodyguard without the actual bodyguard mechanic. Or you can have opportunities like this to close out a game where, let's say you're sitting on some McDuck Manors, you can use Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock, to play some McDuck Manors like I do here, and then I end up questing with the Mufasa, and that allows me to reset my ink, and then I'm able to play some more rush character cards to eliminate some of their threats. So now I have a board full of characters. I have a Mufasa who's going to quest for 4 on the next turn again, as well as these McDuck Manors that are now safe, because even if red removal B-preps me, I think it's a really cool thing with locations is if you go wide, so often you can fear B-prep. Ruby has that board clear status waiting for them. But if you're able to time it, and because we're ramping, we're going to hopefully get to that level of ink faster than they can, putting a couple of McDuck Manors down really makes them think twice about playing B-prep, because it's going to make them have to use their whole turn in order to clear your characters. Then they're not going to be playing bodies to remove the Manors. So let's talk real fast about some opening lines and some combos, once again, that you need to be paying attention to. We'll do a couple mulligans and then we'll head to the chart. Realistically, you've got 3 cards you're looking for in your opening line. Chernobog is the most tried and true classic. This is a 1-drop that you're going to play, and if they don't play a threat on the other side and you realize they don't have a lot of rush, well, perfect. You can go ahead and quest him on turn 2, and you don't have to worry about banishing him because they're not going to remove it. But if you're ever worried about Chernobog getting banished, remember that its greatest value comes from replacing itself. So just make sure that you turn it sideways, quest it, gain that lore, and be sure to banish it and draw a card to replace it. Now, our other 2 lines that we're looking for, one of them being Diablo. You're going to see Diablo quite often because of the fact that it's sort of a combo that exists with itself. Now, Diablo is a 0/1. What's nice about Diablo is that you sort of want Diablo to get banished, because if Diablo gets banished, it replaces itself, and turning a Diablo sideways over and over again, eventually they want to trade into it because they realize that it is gaining them, like it's gaining you lore, so they have to answer it. But if you play the Diablo on turn 1. Turn 2, you're going to ramp because you're going to be looking for our ramp package. On turn 3, if your Diablo is still standing and they haven't answered it because you quested it on turn 2 and they haven't answered it, if you find a crab, this is where you can make some very, very good value trade. You can give that Challenger 3 to Diablo. So now Diablo becomes a 3/1 and it can trade into a Calhoun. It can trade into something else and swing for that 3 damage. And it's when it's banished. Even if it challenges something on opponent's own and is banished, well, congratulations, you still end up drawing a card. The other option is going to be the Bell Popsicle. This is probably our most powerful turn 1 opener. Playing a 3/3 on turn 1 is so powerful. And we talked about how pivotal and how awesome it is for just Sapphire decks in general, the inclusion of this Bell and how we're able to ward off and control the board a bit more, because that's where this deck really struggles. Is this deck struggles at, if your opponent, you can get so caught up in 2 of the games. One, you can get caught up in the ramp game by just, I want to get to those big characters, so you're playing ramp card after ramp card over and over again, whether it be your Sail the Azurite Sea or your Tipo. You get lost in the sauce and you look up and realize that, hey, my opponent has 4 3/3 characters in front of me and I just can't do anything about that. I'm never going to be able to contest the board well enough and I'm in trouble. Very tricky if you get lost in that sauce. The other sauce you can get lost in is the bouncing by playing Madam and Fox over and over again. And we'd love to include more bounce in the deck as well. Let me know in the comments, when you're looking at this list, how would you adapt it? Remembering that essentially the only 2 non-negotiable cards inside of here are Mufasa and Great Stone Dragon, because that's what Andrew wants. That's what we're building around. Make sure you enjoy. It's a card game, guys. Have fun with it. Now let's talk mulligans and see, let's do 2 mulligan runs and just see what some opening lines could look like, because I think that this is one of the more helpful bits, because especially in Lorcana, because the mulligan is so kind to you as a player. Mastering the mulligan really can be one of the best ways to start seeing yourself win more often inside of Lorcana, especially here because this is a very tempo heavy deck. We want to make sure 1 Popsicle, we have a Diablo, a Chernaboggs, a Mufasa, a Merlin, and a Hades. Now, we don't have our ramp. I've told you before, this would be something that I would think about shipping all of this back so that we have the opportunity to draw into ramp. But what we're going to end up doing here is we're actually going to keep the 1 Popsicle. We're for sure not keeping either of these big cards because we don't want to see them yet in the deck. Our turn 4, this is probably our weakest turn 4 play in GOAT. So we already keep 1 Popsicle. So let's go ahead and send this one back. Now I could make an argument to keeping probably the Chernaboggs, and maybe we keep 2. But my thought process would be is if I play a turn 1 Popsicle, I'm going to draw another card. And I'm hoping that I'm going to, because I'm going to be drawing 6 cards if I send this away, I'm realistically going to then be able to look for a 7th card, especially if I was going first. I still get to look for a 7th card, but if I'm not, if I'm going up second, then I'm going to see really 8 cards and have the opportunity to look for that Bell, and my odds are pretty good of finding it with looking for that many cards. Because like I said, that's one of our strongest openers. I'm going to go ahead and lean in, and hopefully by sending 6 back, then I'm also increasing my odds of seeing the ramp. Go ahead and see what we got here. We end up seeing in the 7 cards off the top of the deck, we end up seeing all 4 of our Popsicles. Hiram is rolling in his band grave right now, just saying, hey, I could have gotten you so many cards. I could have gotten you so many cards, but it's okay. We don't need that many, Hiram, because we got rabbits. Rabbits are going to do their thing. The Let It Goes being stuck together is a little tough for us because we only have 2 of them. Hesitancy is going to be to want to ink some of them as we go throughout the game. We're going to say that we're on the play. I would probably ink a Popsicle, play a Popsicle. Nah, I'd probably ink a Let It Go to play a Popsicle and just see what we can do. So we're going to draw into a Hades. That's fine with us because we know on the next turn, we're going to draw into another rabbit. Now we only have 11 uninkables in the deck and we're seeing 3 of them right off the bat. So what are we going to do? We already inked one of our Let It Goes. We need to hold on to this one. So we'll probably ink a Popsicle, play Tipo would be my guess, and then we would probably send this Hades because it's the most dead card that we have into the inkwell, and that would be our turn. On the next turn, we would ready our ink, we draw a card, and we draw into Elsa. This is where decisions can be made. Really like the Elsa, depend on what the matchup is, but because we know we have more and we have the opportunity to draw a lot of different ways, I probably personally would ink the Elsa, play a rabbit, which would allow us to draw into. Okay. Just sticky uninkables today, guys. Sticky uninkables. Tipo can kind of do whatever. We would draw, and then on our last one, let's see. So here we're really going to have the opportunity to do a lot. We want to make sure that we are inking accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and spend 1. We always want to do the cheapest draw that we can to help influence. So we'd play 1 to play Popsicle. Boom, we end up finding a bell. Tricky because we don't necessarily want to, but my guess would be we ink. We play the genie. That would allow us to draw into another one. Okay, perfect. So we've spent this 4 ink. We ideally want to be inking. We want to be drawing before we ink, but we needed to ink in order to do that. And so we probably would then banish one of the popsicles, and we're developing a board. Here we have strong board presence, and we're feeling good as we move through the game. Here we can be a little greedier for it. We have to decide what line we want to walk down. We have the T-pos here, so we only need 1 T-po. I like having genie. We know we're going to keep the genie, so our inkable count is going to be tough. We also look at, we're going to draw however many fresh cards. We have to keep in mind that these cards are not necessarily going to go back in on the draw. So if we had a bunch of uninkables here, then we can ship off accordingly and know that we're going to draw into probably some uninkables. But we only in our starting hand have 1 uninkable. So we have a pretty decent chance of, depending on how many we ship back, of drawing uninkables, which could allow us to be in some trouble. Thankfully, we have T-po as our guaranteed ramp, so the uninkable count isn't terrible. If I were realistically looking at this, I'm going to imagine that I would want to keep a goat, most likely. And then what do I want to do as my turn 1? Do I want to go with the Diablo or do I want to go with the popsicle? Let's see. I'm looking for really 3 each of either way. I only have 3 other Bell Apprentice Inventors, and I have 3 crabs. So my odds are the exact same. Whoa, we went with the popsicle line looking for it last time. So we'll go ahead and keep the Diablo, and we'll draw 3 new cards, and we'll see what we got. We got another Manor, another popsicle, and Fox. If I know that I'm playing Genie, I want to make sure that I'm having threats out on the board for them to have to answer. So by inking a McDuck Manor would be my guess. And then I think we would actually work into the popsicle to start seeing some options. We end up with a second popsicle. That's fine. On turn 2, we would draw. We drew into Sail the Azurite Sea. So this is where we can look at what we have in front of us and we can decide. I like the T-po ramp because if we want to really, depending on what they've played here, we can answer something because we have Fox as an available option to answer into the board. But I kind of like the idea that we can also use that 1 drop of the Sail the Azurite Sea in order to ramp. So here's what I think I would end up doing. I'd probably end up inking the goat. I would spend 2 to Sail the Azurite Sea. That allows me to draw another card. I'm going to end up drawing into another goat. I don't love the idea of inking my second goat. You guys tell me if you think this is the wrong play here, because I'd like the draw later on. But I think that we might ink the T-po and then spend 1 to put a Diablo out on the board. Just so, depending on what they do, if they miss their turn 1 drop, we have the opportunity to play in with the Fox. We have a body out there. And then we draw into another Sail the Azurite Sea. So this is our ramp. We like the idea of ramp. So we could go with a draw turn and end up looking for a lot of options, which might be the right play. Go ahead and see as many options as possible. So we would maybe Sail the Azurite Sea if we felt like we were safe. Okay, that's tough because we draw into an uninkable. Didn't want to play popsicle. Here, we draw into an inkable, but we get to ink twice during this turn. So we just had the opportunity to ramp, but sometimes I think that you can over ramp and put yourself into some trouble scenarios. Because like, let's say here that we went to this spot, we're sitting on a 3 and a 4 drop. So next turn, we're only really playing 1 card anyways. So I think we would ink the bell here. On our next turn, we draw into Mufasa, ruler of Pride Rock. Once again, the uninkables are sticky when I play this deck for some reason. There's only 11, but we seem to draw into quite a bit of them. All right, so here, I think what we would end up doing is we would probably spin the 4 to play Genie, draw in to let it go, ink, let it go. We do want to make sure that we're inking almost every single turn and then just keep progressing our way up. I've played against a lot of Blurple, and I want to talk about one of the things I think is the greatest weakness of Blurple, and that is when people identify these colors, there's not a lot of removal besides challenging and things like that. If people go very wide with a board, it becomes incredibly difficult for you to answer. In the modern meta of Lorcana, there are a lot of 3/3 bodies that have 3 willpower, so it's very difficult to remove them, but they also have 3 strength. They are able to remove a lot of your characters. But I do think this deck is super, super fun. So let's walk through the chart real fast. We're starting off in the cost tier and looking at that, this deck does, because it is a meta deck, because it is trying to be very competitive, it does fall into the pricey tier. 2 decks in a row that we've covered here that are in the pricey tier, but this one just squeaks above it. Currently, at the time of recording this video, it is $181 to buy all of the cards, with lots of that sort of weight of the deck coming from the Hades. At the time of recording this, Hades is a $17 card. So if you don't own any of the Hades or any of the Genies, that alone is going to count for about 70 of the dollars of the deck. Now, Belle Strange but Special is about a $12.50 card right now. So considering, like I said, I think she's something that you could cut. I think you could cut her out for more 1-drop options if you were looking for that. You could cut her out for the Madame snakes that are also cheaper. Definitely some ways to cut the budget down. I mean, truly, if I just got rid of the bells, I get much closer to dropping almost into the affordable tier. Now, tribal. This deck is not tribal at all. It's definitely going to fall into the Nana category. We once again are shooting for, this is a competitive deck trying to lean in the competitive side. And so because of that, there just aren't a lot of character arcs coming through. We do have quite a few bells. I mean, we have 6 bells. We have a lot of Merlins. We have a lot of Madame Mims, which is really cool. But still, I would say that this deck is not very tribal along the way. It's probably just 1 click outside of clicks in order to, you know, sort of use my own lingo against me. Now, when it comes to the competitive side, where would I put this? This one is interesting to me because it's definitely better than the living room deck, because it's very, very, like, it has a lot of combo potential to it. I have a very easy time playing this against the computer on Inktable. I mean, testing it against a lot of meta decks, and once again, the computer makes very predictable moves and things like that. Very rarely is this deck struggling for me to beat the computer. I think that if you took it to set champs, considering how competitive your set champs are, if you live in Atlanta, sorry, seems like pretty much all the great Lorcana players live in Atlanta, or they live in like Southern California. I think that set champs, you could definitely spook some people with it, and if they're not ready to go wide against you, and the more reps and more familiar you get with this deck and start testing it out on Fight Club, I think that you could walk in and shock some people with this during set champs. The combos are huge, and especially in a steel meta, if you are able to get a Mufasa on the board and get it to stick, is devastating to your opponent. It's just so hard for them to remove that character. So certainly something that is fascinating to play. Do I think that it's challenge ready? I'm not sure that this iteration of the list is challenge ready, just because I'm not sure that Mufasa, I'm sure that really great players have answers to Mufasa, or at least they're going to punish you before you get to Mufasa. I wouldn't feel great about it in a challenge meta. I do think that at the set champs level, it certainly shines. And then where would I put it? I'm going to be honest, guys. I have a ton of fun playing this deck. I'm actually going to put it in the dopamine. It has so many combo pieces to it, which is probably the greatest weakness that I have in this deck, is that it does so many cool things, and I want to do all those cool things, but I can't do all those cool things, and I probably make things less consistent because I'm trying to do all these cool things. So how do you find that balance? That's where I'm going to look to you guys, the pro deck builders out there. That, you know, every comment section has that pro deck builder sitting inside of it, and maybe that's you. Would love to know amongst yourselves, keeping the Mufasa Ruler of Pride Rock, keeping the Great Stone Dragon, what modifications would you make to this deck? What would you adjust on this deck? Where are weaknesses that you see inside of it as you are looking at it and trying to decide, hey, this would be something I'd be interested in playing. We want to get our friend Andrew to just absolutely crush with Blurple. As always, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and let me know what deck, what archetypes do you want to see next as we keep working through the meta and you're heading into set champs. I have an idea for a video that's like how to help you pick your like meta deck that you should play. That's something you'd be interested in. Let me know. If not, I keep asking and no one's answering in the comments. I'm looking for it. What starter deck should we do next? Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the questing.